Welcome to the Nevada Patriot Podcast with Matt Sadler.
Thank you for joining us at either 97.7 FM or streaming worldwide on demand on Rumble and YouTube. Side note, you can always catch all our episodes whenever you'd like at thenevadapatriot.com. We're going to keep the show on point and laser focused because, again, I just want to keep some issues on your radar. These issues aren't just academic or abstract. These very things will undoubtedly affect our day-to-day lives. Look, most of us move to Pahrump for a particular lifestyle. I always say a rural lifestyle. Not many people I know moved here seeing Pahrump as a suburb of Las Vegas or some type of burgeoning metropolis. We want a simple lifestyle. We want a tolerant lifestyle, a life where the government reach is very, very slight. Here's some urgent news, folks. With how the power is balanced at a state level, we're going to need to fight to preserve our lifestyle. Laws passed in recent years and new bills being considered in our state capital as I speak, they're geared toward changing that lifestyle. The so-called progressive trend in our state and in our urban centers leadership is taking us along for the ride. And I urge you, participate locally and vote in elections accordingly as if your life depends on it, because I assure you, in many ways, it does. Now, I don't mean to make this podcast overtly partisan, Republican versus Democrat. I'm not going to make any kind of claim that the Republican Party is the great savior of our society and the Democrats the great evil. This isn't Star Wars. This isn't the rebels versus the empire. This is real life. And on the ground, politically, practically speaking, policies that either side at different times have advocated for have adverse reactions in our community. Or when one side doesn't do enough to stop the other side's bullying, it's bad for our community. Right now in Carson City, the balance of power puts almost a supermajority toward the Democrat Party. We do have a Republican governor, but they almost have numbers in the state lawmaking body that are able to overturn anything that our governor would try to veto. So if the governor tries to put a stop to something, they have such overwhelming numbers that all they have to do is convince a Republican or two to go on board with them. And they can potentially override a governor's veto. When the governor vetoes some bad laws, which I'm sure he's going to try to veto these bills as they come and get passed through the Senate and through the Assembly, he's going to still have an uphill battle because they can turn around and override that veto. So there are bad laws, and our numbers in these chambers for Republicans haven't been this disproportionate I don't really remember a time when they've been this disproportionate, in all honesty. So if you're like me and you have certain values out here, if you value safety in our community, if you're concerned about what's being taught in our public schools out here, if you're tired of this woke, bigoted, divisive idealism out there, these policies that are set to divide people into groups and then ultimately pit them against one another, if you're against the government meddling with your lives and with your jobs, if you're tired of wasted money that our government just spends, whether it's a state level or the county level or the very local level, you need to kind of tune in and get involved with what's going on in our community, because these are actually desperate times. We are living in a culture and in a world where we're so often distracted. I'm guilty of this every day. I find myself wasting minutes, sometimes even hours, doing things that in and of themselves might not be horrible, but in the grand scheme of things, these wasted moments, these wasted times when we're not doing the best that we can with the time that we have, because, I blinked and I was 21 years old. I blinked again and I'm over double that age now. So I won't tell you exactly how old. I'm deep into my 40s, and it is just like, it's vapor in the morning. It's dew on the grass. It evaporates. Life is just so fleeting, and we spend so much time wasting it. When we spend this time looking at TikTok or Reels or farting around on Facebook or Twitter or whatever it is, getting into arguments with people we don't even know about things that aren't of utmost importance. And even if they are important issues, when we're spending our time and our resources trying to combat this on some kind of level that's just so superficial, we're wasting our resources. We're getting burnt out. And then what happens when we get burnt out? We're looking for recreation and rest time, and we're not getting anything done when we're resting and recreating. So I'm just putting this out there that there's practical things that we can do at a local level that will help. When the bad bills, we did a few episodes on these, are coming around, and you get those numbers of those bills, SB 74 and some other ones that are bad like that. It's good to try to email, try to call, even write letters with the snail mail. Get them out there and let these politicians know that these are bad ideas. They represent us. And oftentimes, I think when they get up there, they get in this Carson City political bubble, and maybe they're around people and lobbyists or other folks. And I see it out here. We kind of elevate our leaders to a level. They deserve respect, obviously, elected officials or people that climb up the ladder, picking up themselves by their own bootstraps and getting to where they go. They deserve a certain amount of praise, but at the end of the day, they put on their pants one leg at a time, just like we do. They're normal people, and they are there to serve us, to represent us, and all of our dealings with them should not involve, us just looking for reasons to compliment their acumen and how wonderful they are, or how nice their suit looks, or anything like that. We need to hold them. We need to hold them accountable. And if you have grievances, we have to let them know, because by judging some of these bills coming out of either side, whether you're Republican or Democrat, or whether you're far leftist progressive or far right conservative, sometimes they're not putting together the best proposals. So, at the local level, we see the effects here in our community. For years, when I would do business out here, before I actually moved from Las Vegas to Pahrump, I'd been doing business out here for years, and this always seemed to be a very safe, very common sense county in terms of the criminal justice system. So whether it was the court system or the jail. Now I know that everyone's going to have different opinions. There's going to be some people that have negative experiences with law enforcement out here, or the court system. No court system is going to get it perfect all the time. Every police force or sheriff's office in the entire country is going to have its fair share of issues as far as bad apples. But I think, and what I've always thought out here, and even what I believe today, the vast majority of our law enforcement, of our court personnel, of the county workers here in Nye County are very good. They do a very good job. I think there's a lot of integrity out here. I think where the system fails us, it's the system itself. It's not the people. It's the framework from which they have to operate. It's the strings and the constraints that they are bound by. It's bad laws that come trickling down into our community from Carson City that kind of hamstring our officials to a certain degree. With that being said, even despite these bad laws, we have to ask ourselves, do our officials still do our day-to-day work here in Nye County when it comes to the criminal justice system? Are they operating in the best interest at the fullest level of what the community wants and needs and deserves? And I don't think so. I don't think they are. We have a major safety issue in our town. A lot of it stems from adopting policies and effectively enacting those policies like states have done in the past decade or so, where they've had horrible results. We tend to want to model that behavior right now with how we're actually executing the day-to-day living out of these policy changes that came down from Carson City, because it seems like every session, every 2 years, these laws are trying to mirror what we're seeing with our neighbors in California with their laws, or in the Pacific Northwest, or laws being East Coast, whether it's New York or even Midwest, like the policies in Illinois. And you can make an argument that Wisconsin, different states like that, their policies are actually making their communities less safe. They're making it tougher on day-to-day law-abiding Americans, and I'm seeing that trickling in here to Nye County right now as we speak. Now, I'm assuming most of the listeners here up until now have heard the terms, cashless bail, or an end to cash bail, or criminal justice reform, bail reform, all these different words that are kind of synonymous for the same type of ideology. And that ideology is that since there's inherent biases and this criminal justice system is not equitable, the system of bail, for instance, disproportionately targets or infringes on the rights of Americans who don't have as much money as other Americans. Therefore, it has to be thrown out. So basically throwing the baby out with the bathwater. Now, there's always exceptions in this no bail criminal justice reform ideology that we see in different states, right? So capital murder, different egregious charges have to either have a bail ultimately assigned, or people are held in jail until their case is adjudicated or finished, because they're deemed certain crimes will not allow you to have a decent bail attached to it. But for every other crime out there, whether you're cutting catalytic converters, you're burglarizing houses, you're kicking puppies, whatever you're doing out there, other than those types of crimes, the far left has been pushing now for decades, get out of jail free, get out of jail free. And we see that happening in New York City, where there's constant news out there from, and I'm hearing it from people that I know that live out there that really reminisce and miss the golden era of the Rudy Giuliani days, where it was safer, cleaner, better lifestyle in New York. They enjoyed that for, a good several years even after Giuliani left office, because that aftershock, the after effect of him in office, and the way that the culture between police and the community, safety, cleanliness, it all kind of still echoed out past his tenure. And a lot of the folks now are feeling the reverse of that it's that we've lost a lot of the ground in New York City. And one of the common denominators, like it is in so many major urban areas in our country, is that they went for what they call bail reform. What that does is, in a city like that, practically speaking, it creates a revolving door for habitual criminals. There was one, and I know I've said it before, I don't want to feel like I'm beating a dead horse, but people are out there, I guess you can call them serial, non-violent bank robbers. So one of the loopholes with robbing a bank is that if you did it without brandishing a firearm or a deadly weapon, like if you passed a note or some other threat when you were robbing a bank, the jail was still compelled and had to release you on your own recognizance without having to post a bond the next morning. And criminals, or people that are intent on gaming the system, breaking the law, making life hard on law-abiding citizens, are not stupid. They know exactly how to play the game. They know what they can get away with. Out here, we're seeing it now in Nevada. You first saw more of this in the Las Vegas area when they introduced what they call pretrial screenings, different things like that, where people are interviewed, and based upon metrics, they can answer questions on whether the likelihood is that they're going to go to court again, or they're going to reoffend or whatever. So these are all, that's a good thought in principle, but in practical application, it's a shot in the dark. It basically might as well be randomly just letting folks out because they feel like it, because they had nice teeth or whatever during their interview. Some of these metrics seem to be kind of arbitrary, and the statistics back that up. You can go to any reputable statistics online. I think even the CDC, ironically, has some kind of statistic that involves the incidence of people when they come back to court on bail versus going back to court when they don't have to have a bond on them or money that's put up on their behalf. And the numbers are staggering always in almost every community, every survey that's done. Statistically, you're going to go back to court more often and not reoffend while you're on bail than you are if you were just released on your own through the revolving door of our jails. And that's what we're seeing out here. I'm not going to sit here and beat up the sheriff's office or the DA's office or the court system specifically, because they are constrained. Honestly, they are constrained by some bad Nevada laws. There's a bad Nevada law that's in practice right now that we have to kind of abide by. I'll give you an example. The law says that the person that's in custody has to have the least constraining form of bail release proportional to their offense based upon a likelihood of them reoffending. All these the gobbledygook in that bond in that bail law that our legislature passed years ago. I don't understand how they're so sure that you don't have a crystal ball to see who's going to come back to court or not. I've been doing bail bonds a long time. I bailed out doctors. I bailed out musicians. I bailed out actors. I bailed out almost any kind of walk of life that you can imagine. And in all reality, the same concerns are there for the person missing court that has a six-figure income versus the person, that might be at the poverty line. The common denominator that's going to make both of those people go to court is knowing that there's ramification, that there's something that's going to happen to them if they don't go to court. If they don't go to court, a bail bondsman like myself is going to hire bounty hunters to go make sure that that person gets arrested and brought back to court. If a person's released on their own recognizance, obviously there's no bond involved. There's no monetary loss. Grandma didn't have to sign her car title as collateral and pay any money. No one had to pay a big amount of money to the jail that they risk losing when the person doesn't go to court. There's no skin in the game. Compounding that is the fact that what message is that sending when someone doesn't have to put skin in the game, when they've just been arrested on a felony? And since it's not a murder felony or a major other type of deadly weapon felony, that they can be just released on their own recognizance based upon what answering questions the right way. It doesn't seem fair to me. And adding to that law was another law that just went into effect. I believe it went into effect July of this past year, which the Nevada law states that anybody arrested and booked into jail has 48 hours to be before a judge to discuss bail matters. That's a law that I was not highly in favor of because many places, like our community, does not have court on Fridays. So that statute requires a judge to be present during the weekend when the courts are customarily closed. And that puts our judge coming in usually right now on Saturdays. And then you compound that further that when there's a holiday or there's a Monday holiday that's observed, might create the need for another judge to be there on Monday. So this is one of those other unfunded mandates that are passed by our lawmakers. And where does the fees and the cost of that gets trickled down into the local jurisdictions like ours? So our county taxes that we pay and our officials and our departments, our agencies out here have to then staff themselves accordingly in response to a bad law that was passed. It used to be, 72 hours, I believe, was customary in almost every jurisdiction, but that did not always take into account holiday weekends. So, hate to say it, but if you're out being a knucklehead and you get into trouble, or you're fist fighting with your roommate, you get arrested on a Friday, you might not be seeing a judge until Tuesday morning. And I think, that was par for the course, and that was fair and to be expected, and that was just part of the system. I didn't see really anything inherently unfair about that because you're going to have an automatic bail amount when you're arrested on 99% of the things that you could possibly be arrested for. They have the ability to bail out pretty much from the moment they get arrested. There's going to be a bond automatically set. And in our state, I assure you that our bond amounts are relatively reasonable, especially when you compare them to California or other states where, first-time DUI in California for years, this is years ago, was like a $20,000 bail. Out here in Las Vegas and in Pahrump, it's always been under $2,000. In fact, under $1,000 in Pahrump is actually that bail amount. So that's not an unreasonable amount that someone would have to, pay a 15% on to bail out. That's not an unreasonable bail. I don't think there's any constitutional infringement there on anybody's rights. And furthermore, when you have people that have to see a judge within 48 hours, in and of itself, that still is almost a reasonable amount of time where the DA could kind of get some information together. They could kind of look over a file. Maybe the person's been there, hasn't bailed out, wants to see the judge. Okay, the second day, they might be able to come in with a better game plan. What we're seeing, however, right now, and what I want the folks to understand is when you are getting arrested, say on a Tuesday night, I don't know, police come to your house, you're doing something wrong, they catch you. Oh, you're the guy that we caught on film burglarizing, Joe's house or whoever. You're under arrest. Well, that person knows how the system is being played out because that person might know people who in our town have already been through the system, been arrested recently, have gone through the process. And what does their friend tell them? Well, it says 48 hours, but you're probably going to see a judge the very next morning. And so when they have to corroborate that information to a bondsman or to maybe jail personnel, I'm sure they're getting the idea that, if they just stick around in jail, they're going to see a judge the very next morning. More often than not, they're booked in at 10 p.m. They're going to see a judge at 9 a.m. or earlier the very next morning. And according to the way the laws are written, or they're so, and I think the judges, and sometimes for good reason, are worried about going against Nevada law that they're going to go ahead and let the person go, especially if there's not an argument made from the district attorney's office, because maybe they're afraid that they're imposing on a Nevada law, so they're not going to argue for bail. So then the person just gets released and was like, oh, wow, I had a felony burglary charge here, and they're just releasing me on my own recognizance without a bond? Okay, cool. So I'll ask you, what does that situation do for that person's psyche, the person who just got arrested? Does that embolden that person? Now, hopefully that person who got arrested will be the one and done type of person where they realize their mistake. They got arrested, they got thrown a break, they got let out of jail for free. They're never going to do it again. But I can tell you from doing this for over 15 years, what you see is a sense of emboldenment, and then these sentiments get spread out in the community of lawbreakers, if you can call it that way. But there are people who make a living out of breaking the law. That's what they do. They're wired for it. A lot of it can be substance abuse driven. A lot of it could be mental. It could be just stresses. Some of it's laziness. Sometimes people don't want to work for something that they can just go take from somebody else. But when you see this happening, and if you see the situation replicated daily, weekly, monthly, and then yearly, there are consequences for that for a community. We are a community that numbers in the tens of thousands. We're not a community of millions where the occasional person, the people breaking the law, catching breaks, getting incentivized to commit crime, won't necessarily change the dynamics of an entire community. When you have, for instance, hundreds and hundreds of law enforcement officers, we don't have hundreds of law enforcement officers that are patrolling. There's times when we have just a handful of patrol deputies and people out there that are keeping the peace, that are rooting out the criminals, that are doing detective work, that are doing fantastic work. To oftentimes see that person that they just put their neck out on the line trying to arrest get let out of jail with almost zero accountability because of poorly enforced and interpreted, in my opinion, laws. Now you got to ask yourself, if our local officials, whether they're the judges, whether they are, court administrators, whether they are the district attorney's office personnel, if they're doing everything in their power to make the community safe in spite of these terrible laws, if they're operating within the legal realm to the utmost maximum ability, then I am fine with that. The problem is, I don't believe they are. I don't believe they are doing the absolute best. I believe there's an element of, there's always, you never want to do the wrong thing. You want to always do the right thing. You want to always do the best thing. However, human nature, if there is a lot to lose and very little to gain on certain issues, sometimes people tend to quote unquote play it safe, right? So in other words, if you're an employee and you've got a boss that's very demanding on you and you're going to get paid the same amount of money per hour, are you going to risk getting your boss mad over trying to do something that you think is the right thing, but maybe the boss won't like it? Are you going to put your neck out there for little to no reward? Because even if you do the right thing and you're not going to get a back pat from your boss. The best thing that happens is you keep your job. But if you just kind of sit there and keep your mouth quiet and you just let things slide, you don't really get involved in it, but you have your job security, you're just going to err on the side of job security. It's human nature, right? So where there's not a lot of reward and only risk, you tend to see people kind of immobilized. And then that brings up another question. When we go to the polls, when we're out there, supporting candidates, when we're knocking on doors, when we're making phone calls on behalf of people, putting signs on the corners that irritate the drivers and people passing by, or put them on our own properties to support a candidate or a cause, is it worth doing all that for people that are just going to be middle of the road, that are going to just play it safe, so to speak? Is it worth it? And don't we see our community different than most of Nevada? I always saw Pahrump in Nye County as a fairly close but a community to Las Vegas, but a bastion of kind of freedom and a little bit of the Old West. In fact, I was talking with Anthony Greco on a prior show. Those signs about the New Old West that Pahrump used to have, welcome to the New Old West, they're gone now. And in so many ways, in so many respects, with how I see day-to-day life out here in Pahrump, it just seems like we are kind of eroding that. We are kind of just becoming a faraway suburb of a metro area, and I don't want that for this community. That's not why I moved out here. It's not why most of my friends moved out here. It's for the lifestyle. It was for bringing up my kids in a better place, with better opportunities, with limited government, and with safety. Now, I know there's no place that's completely safe. I'm not a dummy. Wherever people are, as flawed as we are, there's going to be elements of people being unjust to one another, of being criminal to one another even. And that's where, having a righteous police representation, sheriff's office comes in handy, because I think we do have one. And they do their job. And they do arrest the bad guys. I'm fully confident when I'm hearing these stories on Facebook, when there's somebody out on the loose, somebody's breaking the law bad, there's a standoff, there's somebody that's evading after committing a horrible alleged crime or whatnot, I'm fully confident that our sheriff's office is going to make that arrest. Where I lack the confidence is what happens later on in the system. Now, I was hoping that when this new cycle for the new regime kind of came into the district attorney's office, that things would change, or there would be a different sentiment, or where I'd have a little bit more hope. But sadly, I'm not seeing it yet. I'm not saying it's not going to get there. I just knew we didn't have it with the last district attorney's office, and I was hoping this one was going to be markedly different. And I'm still hoping that it will. But we'll have to kind of see about that. We're going to take a quick break here in a moment and listen to a community acknowledgement. Thank you for standing by. Thank you for sticking with us here. And if you're listening on 97.7 FM, make sure you tune in each night at 6 p.m. You're going to hear a talk show that's going to be different almost every day. So I'm on Saturdays and replays on Tuesdays at 6 p.m. But any other night, you're going to hear different points of view. So I encourage that. Stick around. We'll be right back. So what is Pahrump doing Easter weekend?
So if someone cancels Easter, then this busting every season open.
Well, then I have good news for you, little guy. No need to bust every season open, because Saturday, April 8th, 2023, Pahrump Holiday Task Force is putting on the Community Easter Picnic at Patriot Park. Again, 10 a.m. to 2 p.m. Saturday, April 8th. There's going to be hamburgers, hot dogs, kettle corn, cotton candy, fun activities for the kids and adults alike. There's going to be booths set up with games and prizes, along with Easter eggs with goodies inside of them. You don't want to miss this. The food is free. The event is free. There's no admission. Come on down. It's going to be a family-friendly, free event. Hope to see you there.
Attention conservative women of Pahrump. I'm Sharon Sadler, asking you to save the date, Sunday, May 7th, 2 p.m. I will be hosting the first ever conservative women's tea. Refreshments, entertainment, fun, and of course tea. Let's celebrate our local women, women leaders, and women-owned businesses. Open to all women. Proceeds benefit the Pahrump Valley Republican women. Registration details and tickets available now at thenevadapatriot.com. It will be a fantastic event. Hope to see you all there.
We're back. I appreciate you staying with us. Thank you for listening. Didn't want this to turn into a big rant about complaining about the jail system out here, but this is how the show kind of evolves. So bottom line, I don't want to live in a community where our officials are directly or even indirectly, innocently, if you will, incentivizing criminal behavior. I do not believe in incentivizing criminal behavior, period. So if you are happy with our public officials, if you're happy with our district attorney's office, our justices of the peace, and you wholeheartedly believe that they are doing their best job at preserving justice, doing their job to the best of their ability despite these bad laws, by all means continue to support them, continue to vote for them, raise money for them, help them out in any way you want. If you're a bit of a skeptic, I implore you, dig deeper. Form your conviction based upon reason and actual facts. If in your heart of hearts you believe they are not doing it, do your job, your political duty, your civic duty, and do what you can to get better, more effective leadership. And I'll leave it at that. So moving on to the next topic that I kind of wanted to touch on as we went forward here was going to be another thing that affects our community. What is being taught in our schools? What is being taught in our schools? I think we made a good step forward by adding a good member to the Board of Trustees out here in the Nye County School District. So I think COVID has let all of our families and citizens and families out here that have school-age children in the public system know a bit more of what's being taught in our schools. And to put it plainly, any remnant or trace or minutia of these woke, bigoted policies, these principles of critical race theory, these ideas that we're going to focus on immutable characteristics that we have no control over, our ethnicity, where we're from, who our parents are, who relatives generations prior to us might have done right or wrong. We have no control over that. So when our school system advocates for policies and lessons that focus on these divisions between people groups, whether it's teaching one group of people that they have a certain amount of privilege that they need to be repentant of, that they need to somehow make reparations toward another group of people based upon that perceived advantage or privilege, I think that's sickening. On the other side of the token, if you're going to tell another group of young kids that they are inherently at a disadvantage based upon their immutable characteristics, based upon their skin color, where they came from, things that have nothing to do with the content of character. And Martin Luther King comes to mind, right? He would have been abhorring certain behaviors that we're seeing now in the public sphere, in the public school system even. He would not be in favor of this. He was an ardent supporter of judging people based upon the content of their character and not these characteristics, and not the sins of our forefathers or people who shared a similar skin tone to one group of people. We're not responsible for that. If I had a great-grandfather that robbed banks and trains and did horrible things, which I don't think I do, but if I did, it would have nothing to do with me. If I had relatives generations before that invented the light bulb or the transistor radio, I can't go around taking credit for that. We all have to be our own people. We all have to be our best selves. We have to use our gifts, talents, and abilities and opportunities to the best of our ability, and that should ultimately be what we're teaching the next generation of students. And if we can't teach them proper reading, writing, and arithmetic, what business is it of these school districts to teach certain doctrines to our kids? It's not their business. Sex ed, I don't think it's their business. History, yes, but real history, come on, let's teach that. So we as county taxpayers, I think, have a huge, say. We should have a huge say in how our money's being spent. A huge portion of our property taxes, for instance, goes toward the education of the kids in our county and in our state, for that matter. So I think we need to be more vocal. I am encouraged by participation of parents at these board meetings that never used to really be that many parents represented there speaking on behalf of their children. But it's about time that we do that. And I think in many areas, including ours up until recently, you would see infiltration of bad ideas, bad ideology, whether it was affecting our library here in Pahrump or especially affecting our public schools out here in Pahrump. And now I think we've got some more cooler heads that are kind of going to be managing things. But this just goes to show you that at the local level, when we elect these officials to school board, county commission, state assembly, these lower level county and state positions, it is so important. It is so important because you elect a crop of bad people, and we live with that day-to-day bad outcome right off the bat. And oftentimes it's these types of elections that aren't being featured on Fox News or CNN or any of the big outlets or online or whatever you're listening to, podcasters, Dan Bongino, Tucker Carlson, whoever. You're not hearing about the politics of Pahrump, Nevada, Nye County, Nevada. But I assure you that what goes on here in Pahrump and here in Nye County, on balance, will affect us way more than policies at the national level. So you got to keep all politics is local. You've heard that before, and it's true. Look at Chicago. Lori Lightfoot, the mayor of Chicago, did not make the top 2, so she's not involved in a runoff. Good. I think the people of Chicago are tired of lawlessness. They're tired of policies that are just making their city less safe and less enjoyable, and they acted on it. And even though we're much smaller by scale, it's really important for us to be the exact same way, because too often we get not that they're not important issues on the national and world level, but we get too involved on issues that may not affect our friends, neighbors, and family members, like some of these other issues. So I implore you, get involved with that. So as bills come across that are affecting our students in our state, in our county, in our town, I'll be sure to speak about it on this platform, on this show. So if you don't already, get onto the NevadaPatriot.com. We have all of our shows archived there, so you can listen to them on demand. I think 23 of them, including this one, that you can find on our site. So please check that out. So other issues that we're going to have to be looking out for this legislative session that are going to affect our day-to-day. government meddling in our lives and jobs, I'll just pretty much start winding down our show on one example that I have here. I have in our circle of friends out here in Pahrump, there's a few, actually now we have several midwives that we're friends with, right? So they're the folks that help you with the home birth, right? So when you don't want to have that hospital experience when you're giving birth to your child, a good option is a midwife. And so often people want that option because maybe they don't want some of the red tape, some of the hoops that you jump through, or some of the status quo type things. And I'm not saying they're all bad. Sometimes the hospitals in that system, regular obstetricians, it's a good fit for some, but it's not a good fit for everyone. And I believe in choice, right? So you have a right to choose how you're going to bring your child into the world. I think God ordained you as the parent, as the mother. And with that ordination, you have certain rights and responsibilities, but you have the right to do it how you see fit, what's going to be the best fit for your family, for your body, for your child's well-being. And oftentimes people are choosing midwives. Well, we're seeing laws that are now presented again in our legislature that could hamstring these folks, whether it's extra licensing things or other requirements that they're forced to or coerced to do by the state. Those are bad things. So plan on elaborating more on some of these bills being proposed a little bit later in one of our other shows in the coming days and weeks here. So be on the lookout for that. I wish sometimes this was a daily show so that I could speak more in depth, because there are hundreds of these bill proposals out there, and there is not enough minutes in what I have less than an hour usually for this show. So we have a lot to talk about. So I try to pick what I can off the top here and elaborate a little bit deeper on less issues, even though ideally I'd like to talk about more issues. Beyond that, I mean, just like you, I think I'm tired of the government wasting our money. So be expecting that anytime there's a bill that's affecting the pocketbooks. I think every couple years, or maybe every 4 years, there's always some talk about laws getting passed that are going to tax the service industry, meaning, professional photographers, or, mortgage consultants, or real estate agents, people that offer professional services where you're not getting, the Nevada state is not getting their hand in that tax money. Because we as these types of businesses, we report this stuff. When you charge up a credit card with me at the bail bonds office, they're letting the IRS know with the 1099-K form and all that. They know what we're processing here. It's just another way for the government to kind of get their hands on resources that don't belong to them. I think our founders, the framers of our Constitution, the founders of this country, would turn over in their graves seeing what kind of environment of taxation that we live under. I mean, they went to war in the Revolution for reasons such as this, and I bet they would be really disappointed on how out of control that is. I don't think they would envision the government, aside from forming basic functions like safety, roadways, infrastructure, some basics, common defense, would have such a huge hand in almost everything that we do, to where they're going to have the ability to, tell midwives in Nevada that they have to do certain reporting when it comes to babies that are at high risk for certain birth abnormalities and things like that. I don't believe they have the right to get in there and start telling these folks what they need to be doing with the type of business and service that they're offering their clients. I don't believe a massage therapist needs to get an income tax on their services. I don't believe a bondsman like myself needs to worry about paying a service tax. All these things trickle down to the consumer, and the business is hurt simultaneously. It's bad. So I'll kind of wrap up the show by highlighting a Senate Bill 153, one that I think slipped through the cracks. I hadn't really noticed this until now. But it's a bill. While we're talking about the government finding ways to waste our time, waste our money, because no doubt there's costs. Every time they implement a new program, there's going to be some kind of cost. It comes from somewhere. Some budget has to pay for it, but government money doesn't fall down from the sky. They don't create anything. They don't have any money that they don't first take from someone else, like you and me, the taxpayer. So this is our money that is always talking about this. So just when you hear about, money being spent or allocated at the state level or at the federal level, it's not some mysterious money that comes from some mysterious source. It comes from your pocket. It comes from your pocketbook. So this law, SB 153, it's an act relating to the corrections, requiring the director of the Department of Corrections to adopt regulations prescribing certain standards concerning offenders who are transgender, gender nonconforming, gender non-binary, and intersex, requiring a program of facility training for correctional staff to include training in cultural competency for interacting with offenders who are transgender, gender nonconforming, gender non-binary, and intersex, and providing other matters properly relating thereto. So is it me, or does every time you turn on the TV, every time you're streaming something, every time you're watching a YouTube video, this stuff is in the background. It's in the foreground. Sometimes it's right in your face. It's as if in recent years there's this fascination with transgender issues that was never as prominent as it is right now. It just seems like now it's taken our society and our culture by hostage. It's taken the entertainment industry by hostage. And now I'm seeing it creeping into the criminal justice system, trying to take it hostage. And the incarceration system, when you're Nevada Department of Corrections is where you are, serving your sentence. If you're sent to prison, you're going to be sent to one of these facilities. And I'm sure this spills over into the local jails as well. But this idea that they're singling out these ideas to be just so prescient when the primary purpose for a corrections facility is punishment and deterrence, right? So I'm not wholeheartedly concerned if you're sentenced to a year or two. It's good if you can pick up some trade skills. It's good if you pick up good advice. It's good if you are enrolled in Alcoholics Anonymous or other programs. They're going to make you a better person. That is not the primary interest, though, that I have as a law-abiding citizen for when somebody is found by, whether convicted by a judge or a jury of their peers, if they're sentenced for good cause for a crime that they committed, that they're going to pay their debt to society. And my primary concern isn't so much every need and validation being met for these offenders. It's not. I'm sad. If that sounds callous, call me callous. But that's just the way that I feel. I guess I'll have to hope for Veto Joe to earn that nickname and veto another one, because if that bill gets out of committee and it goes to a floor vote, the numbers are so staggering, and the Democrats seem to go lockstep on so many progressive issues. Doesn't matter what it is. It can be practically any issue that makes it to the floor. They're probably going to vote in favor of it. So hopefully that's one that can get passed. And I'm not saying that the fate of the state of Nevada rises or falls based upon this one bill, Senate Bill 153, but goodness sakes, it's just one of a litany of unnecessary bad laws that are being proposed right now. So add that one to your list. If you want to add another bill to go ahead and complain to the committee. The committee that's on this one is the Committee on Judiciary. So not every single representative is part of every committee. They usually have certain committee assignments. So if you go to the main website for the state of Nevada legislature, you'll be able to find tabs that will take you to the different committees. So, and the emails are on there actually on the site. It's actually a pretty intuitive site once you break into it, that you can kind of figure things out, click on, find the emails, find the phone numbers for these representatives, and maybe urge them no on some of these bill proposals. Not that, a couple emails here and there is going to sway somebody necessarily, but the aggregate, the combination of pressures and sentiment, they'll listen to it. They do. Above all, people don't want to go up to Carson City and just irritate all the voters ultimately it's not only about reelection, although that will help them get reelected if they do the will of the people. But nobody wants to be looked at as a dummy up there. So, email them. And if you want to try to make them feel like dummies for suggesting these types of bills, then by all means do that. So as we're coming down to the last portion of the show here, just want a reminder of some community events going on. So the Saturday right before Easter, I believe that is, that's April 8th on Saturday at 10 a.m. Patriot Park. Make sure you make it out there. It's a good free event. The food's going to be free. There's going to be games and prizes, train rides for the little ones, pictures with the Easter Bunny. It's going to be free. It's brought to you by the Pahrump Holiday Task Force. They're the same folks who generously feed the community on Thanksgiving and Christmas, and also help out with an awesome 4th of July event and parade. So go out and support that event. Go have a good time. We're always looking for good stuff to do with the family out here, and that is now on our annual list. So you will definitely see me and my family there. I hope also that ladies out there would consider the Conservative Women's Tea being held at the Artesia Community Center on Sunday, May 7th. That is the week before Mother's Day. Ladies are invited there. The cost for those tickets and details is on my site, thenevadapatriot.com. You can get those tickets through Eventbrite, or reach out to a lady in the Pahrump Valley Republican Women, that group. Some of them are going to be having tickets on them. If you wanted to purchase a ticket in person, you can do that, or you can go through Eventbrite. So that's going to wrap it up for today's show. Again, I appreciate you listening, and hopefully these shows are informative for you, and not a waste of your time. I think they're good. They're good information. So I know sometimes I need to hear these things on my own. I listen to other podcasts, other shows on this network. Quick shout out to Amy Nelson. I noticed you left a comment through my site for my show. You actually have a show on here as well on Mondays, I believe, 6 p.m. And I appreciate your feedback, your encouragement. That means a lot. I appreciate that, Amy. And any other viewers or listeners out there that want to throw in your 2 cents about the show, or possible questions that you have, or ideas, or where I'm wrong, I'm always open for discussion. You can reach out to me through thenevadapatriot.com. There's a contact form on there, or you can call or text me at 775-382-2516, 775-382-2516. Again, thank you for listening on behalf of the Nevada Patriot Podcast and 97.7 FM. God bless you.
You've just spent some of the best minutes of your life hanging out with Matt Sadler at the Nevada Patriot Podcast. Thank you for listening. Tell a friend and join us next time. After you catch your breath, check out thenevadapatriot.com for more content, advertising opportunities, and to give listener feedback. That website again is thenevadapatriot.com. Until next time, Patriots, stay American.